Hello and welcome to Pickles Garage. Today we're working on my 1993 Z28 Camaro. Please ignore the clear coat. I swear I didn't do it myself, but specifically we're going to be using an OBD1 scanning tool. Now, you might be a little bit more familiar with the OBD2 scanning tool. You see these on a lot more modern vehicles. It's a little bit more complex than the OBD1 just because it can just plug in and give you a code that you could then look up for your specific make and model, and it'll give you a little bit more detail on what it is your check engine light is indicating. Now, the OBD1 is a lot more simplistic. It doesn't really give you a code or anything, and I'll show you the details of how it works. This is more for vehicles from 1982 to 1995, so this 1993 fits in perfectly, but there is the full list. So like I said, I'm going to go through the details of how to use this scanner and if it's worth it, and then I'm also going to show you a backyard way to do exactly what this thing does. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first off, let me show you where you can get it. I got mine on Amazon right here. You can find these on Amazon, INNOVA 3123 GM OBD1 Code Reader, and just looks like the product that I'm showing you here. And you can find it for about $24.99. Looks like it's on sale, so it could go up to $32.70 when you end up looking. And then if you have a Ford, right there, $25.99 as well. And let's go ahead and open this up, and then we'll start reading through. So naturally, it's a little bit thicker than you expect, and that's because there's kind of a booklet in here that we're going to review. But let's go ahead and open it up, and then I'll show you more of the details with it. Alright, so I want to show you the booklet real quick before I go ahead and plug it in. Now, here is our reader, and this is going to be the easiest way to understand how this system works. So like I said, an OBD2 is going to show you a specific code, but these OBD1s, what they do is they blink your check engine or your service light. And so the series in which it blinks, they typically will do it 3 times, gives you the indication of what your system has wrong with it. Now, code 12 means that the system is actually completely fine, and rather than it being 12 blinks, what it does is it does each number, and then it does the next number. So it will blink, pause, blink, blink. So that's 1, pause, 2, right? 12. So if you see code 22, it's blink, blink, 2, pause, blink, blink, 2, which is 22, right? And then 30, if there's a 0, it's going to be blink, 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 3, and then a very long pause, and then it'll do the same thing again. So that's not going to be 33, that's going to be 3, very long pause, much longer than these ones, and then that'll be a code 30. So that is what we are looking for when we're doing this. And I'll show you at least a couple pages of what some of the indications are for these codes, but you're going to want to make sure that you use this switch to be in the ECM. That is your computer, your onboard computer, and that is addressing those codes. The other thing that you can do later on is the ABS, but that's more related to your braking system. So for what most of you, I imagine, are going to be using this for, you're going to want it in the ECM position. So let's go ahead and plug her in. Alright, so step 1 is we're going to go to the driver's side of our vehicle, and we're going to look under the dash. Now, I'm scanning the underside of the dash, even though I know where it is, just because I want to show you. It's not always located in the same spots, but you're just going to want to look under the dash, and you should see a plug that looks just like that. Like I said, sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's along the wall, but on mine specifically, it's right here. So we're going to go ahead and plug it in right there. Okay, so it should plug in face up like that, and then you're going to have your key in the ignition. Now we're going to put it to the run position, but we're not going to turn on the vehicle. We're just going to put it in the run position. So it's on, but not running. And then we could start to see the codes coming in. 1, pause, blink, blink, 2. So that to me is 12, and like I said, it should do it 3 times. I think I missed the first one, but that is showing 12 on our service light, which means that our system is responding, but there's no codes to be found. So that's a good sign for me personally, but I'll go into detail why I'm getting that and why I'm still making this video. So let me do that right now. Alright, so why do I not have codes even though I you know, theoretically have an issue with my vehicle, and that's why I bought the thing in the first place. Well, the reason is because my battery died. So that kind of ties back into erasing service codes. Now, there's a couple different ways to do it. You could pull a fuse, but the absolute easiest way, that I think is the only real way to do it for realistic use, is to disconnect the negative side of the battery, and then you wait, you can wait like 15 seconds or so, and then when you reconnect it, then the ECU will be, or ECM rather, will be refreshed, and so you won't have the same codes. Now, that's the issue if you're kind of working on something that might have some sort of random gremlin that you're trying to locate, is if your battery dies for whatever reason because you're trying to crank it or who knows what, then it's going to end up erasing your codes anyways. So that is information on, how you can erase your code, but also a negative to what this is. That's why if you remove the negative, you usually won't pass emissions if you drive straight to the emissions testing place right after. Your vehicle has to go through a drive cycle. Takes time, takes driving, and so that is kind of one of the negatives with this specific thing. Luckily, I figured out the issue anyways, so I didn't really need it, but I still want to make the video on how to use this. Now that you've seen how to use it, if you wanted to do the ABS to check your braking system, you just have to move that switch down. That is all the information you need for that. But real quickly, I'm going to go over a way for you to effectively get everything you need from what this does without having to buy it. So let me show you that right now. All right, so back under the dash here, I'm going to pull this straight out. Now, when you look inside, you'll notice that it is incredibly simple, right? If you have an OBD2, you'll notice that the prongs are, completely filling this area. But with these OBD1s, all they are is 3. Now, essentially, when you're switching back and forth between the ECM and the ABS, it is just toggling essentially between these prongs here. And so what you can do, and there's going to be more detailed videos on this, but what you could do is essentially find the port, right? You see those top right 2, and then connect it to, because that would have went in, right, those top 2, and then connect it to that bottom one here, which would be down here. And so likely I think it's that third one right here. But technically you can get a bit of wire or a paper clip and go ahead and connect the ports without having to have one of these. Now again, there's videos that are going to be a little bit more detailed on that, but I just want to give you an option if you really didn't want to buy this for whatever reason, then that is kind of the backyard trick, is just arcing between those 2. Now, the issue then is that you don't have this book, which is actually very helpful. And so you could probably look up, I would imagine, most of these codes. But as I said, I'll just do a quick scan. You can pause if you want to, of some of these pages. I'm not going to give you the whole thing, obviously, but I'm sure you can look up most of this information online, and then that be your way of kind of avoiding it. But it's so cheap that it's just worth it just to go ahead, plug in, and just buy the thing. But that is how to use an OBD1. Like I said, it doesn't really work for my case just because my battery had died, and now I don't have the drive cycle to tell me where my issue is. But if you have a regular running vehicle and you go ahead and buy one of these, you can get the information that you need that way. So thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.